Today on episode 55 of Politically Conscious, special start time Wednesday, 9:45 a.m. As healthcare costs surge, will Republicans protect or pull the ACA subsidies? And what does President Trump's attack on Rob Reiner amid a tragic murder reveal about the state of our republic? Is Trump losing his base or still being cheered for keeping his promises? If you're tired of the propaganda, listen to us. What's up, everybody? Popping up on y'all at a special time. I'll take the blame for Politically Conscious episode 55. My man Emil coming through like he always does, holding us down. If you will, Emil, give an introduction. We're waiting on our brother Leo to hopefully get on here. He's finishing up a meeting as well. And, it's hard to, track down three busy brothers to pull things off, man. And so I actually set an appointment too close to our start time. And I said, well, let's get a 45-minute show versus an hour show today so that we have something this week versus nothing. A lot going on, as always, but I feel like even more this week than on many other weeks that we've had. And we can't get to all of it in 45 minutes. So we're going to pick out a couple things, look at some clips from the internet and give the left and right perspective as we still a little time to get our brother Leo on here. But if you will, Emil, introduce yourself. I'm going to start with what's happening right now, which is these ACA subsidies. But go ahead, brother.
Brother, you are calling it like it is. It is busy out here. These politics are insane. I am Emil Bryant, a political consultant, author, and speaker. My job is to counsel my candidates to tell the truth, tell it early, tell it often. Bad news does not get better with time, and voters need all the information they can get in order to make informed and intelligent decisions. Remember, candidates, you have the responsibility of telling the people what they need to know to make a good decision, including voting you out.
So let me go ahead and get this thing started. If you're a first-time watcher of our show, again, we just react to different clips around the internet. And so this is what's actually happening right now as we speak. I think I got this clip as of less than 24 hours ago. This is what we're up against right now. We'll start here, Adil.
Tonight, we're learning the House will not hold a vote to extend enhanced subsidies under the Affordable Care Act. The move effectively guarantees higher insurance premiums next year for millions of Americans who get coverage through Obamacare. House Speaker Mike Johnson told the Republican caucus about the decision in a closed-door meeting earlier today. Some Republicans in swing districts say they are against the move.
I think it makes it difficult for everyone, because everyone here is going home and talking to their constituents who are going to be saying, why is it that my health care premiums have increased by thousands of dollars when Congress could have done something about it? So honestly, I think this has been a failure of leadership by both parties.
The fact is, Obamacare has failed. We all know that. We acknowledge that. But to not have a vote on the extension with reforms, with conservative reforms, income limits, elimination of zero premium plans, PBM reform, HSA expansion. To not do that is idiotic. It is political malpractice.
Some Republicans are considering joining a discharge petition with Democrats to end run Johnson and force a vote.
That's where we're at, brother. And as y'all are the experts here, y'all the consultants, so y'all know more about this than I do. But for the American people, it's just, this is a huge factor, right? The cost of our health care, because, let's just, in my opinion, let's be honest. We've never made a true concerted effort to have universal health care like a lot of developing countries easily. Well, I should say they all have it. I don't know if it's easy, so let me be careful with that word verbiage. But they all have it, and we're stuck in this fight to where we even hear some Republicans are against what's happening, which is the no vote on the ACA subsidies is the way I understand it. But just some of your thoughts, Emil, about where we're at, because we're on the brink. This has to be decided by the end of the month, right? Or something to that effect, or is it already too late?
No, it's not too late, but with the Mike Johnson-led House, you're seeing the Republicans use every tool in their kit to squeeze pain out of the electorate on the hope that they want to continue voting for Republicans. There's a report that was released on December 3rd from the GAO, the Government Accountability Office, that said there was fraud, waste, and abuse in the ACA Obamacare subsidy system. Now, some Republicans are using that report to say, see, look, we should not extend those subsidies because of this fraud, waste, and abuse. And other experts are saying it's not as bad as the report says, but more importantly, the report's a preliminary report. So that means that the data that they're gathering is ongoing. It's still under analysis. It's not a completed deal. So some Republicans are using that report to say, nah, we can't have any subsidies. Meanwhile, healthcare is going to be more expensive. And because Mike Johnson called a King's X, as it were, to the vote for ACA subsidies, it's over in the House. Now, remember, a few weeks ago when the Democrats were holding out trying to get these ACA subsidies extended, they capitulated and they said, we'll accept a vote in the Senate for these subsidies. Well, now that is a moot point, because even if the Senate does vote, and if perchance lightning strikes 3 times in the same place, the Senate passes ACA subsidies, guess what the House just said? We're not doing it. We're not taking it on. We're not going to play. So you have, at the end of all of this, absolutely zero from the Democrats having held out and shut the government down. You have the Republicans recalcitrant, and you have a report that is helping fuel the flame instead of looking for solutions. And the bottom line for the American people is your healthcare costs are going to go up significantly if you're using ACA subsidies.
And man, I'm glad you went back to that point, because I still remember how upset you was about the Democrats holding out at that point, because your stance has always been it should have never been an acceptance of the big beautiful bill, or as you call it, the big ugly bill, right? And
right.
So you was like, that's when the stance should have taken place. And then I ended up asking, just based on what I could see at the time on the previous show when we started talking about the holdout, I asked at the end, did the Democrats play us? And your position was, this is exactly what was going to happen. So even the promise for the vote now, if I'm hearing you clearly, is even worse than what they supposedly got at the time was a promise for the vote, because you're telling me now that that vote is null and void because of what the House decided. Am I hearing that correct?
You are 100% correct. And here's the thing. You have Republicans who are saying they want to initiate a discharge petition. For our listeners who are not familiar, a discharge petition is a way for the members of the House to go around the Speaker and conduct business. The Speaker's job is to organize and order the business of the House. They do that by lots of different rules and setting the agenda. When they take something off the agenda, like ACA subsidies, then the only way for it to be back on the agenda is for a majority of the House, 218 or more members, agreeing through a discharge petition that they all must sign that this is the business we want to deal with. So now some of the Republicans, which might be enough to form the majority needed to put this back on the agenda, are saying, we're going to do a discharge petition. You can expect the Democrats to sign that discharge petition if it means, like the others that have been signed by both Democrats and Republicans, it gets the agenda back on, or gets the item back on the agenda. The problem with this is the Speaker of the House is clearly using an agenda that isn't about the people. And even his members are starting to wonder if this is a good idea.
Man, I mean, how do I not, as the American people, not feel played? Because I thank you for breaking it down, in a sense, the granular ideas of how this works. Again, that's why we're politically conscious, to get experts like yourself kind of breaking down and helping us understand exactly what's happening, helping us weed through what we're hearing in the media, right? So I thank you for that breakdown. So as I listen to you clearly, it sounds like the political malpractice that one senator mentioned in that video. He says, hey, we're practicing political malpractice per se. And it's like playing with us. Like even if I listen to you clearly, this is just getting it back on the agenda. So even that political discharge doesn't get the American people what they want, because you're saying, hey, a vote in the House now no longer matters. Again, I'm just kind of reiterating for our watchers, that's what the Democrats capitulated for, was just this vote that you've now broke down to me as null and void. And now some in the public, some Republicans, because of their districts, sounding like they're protecting their people or they're fighting back for their people, know that they're just getting it back on the agenda to be voted on by the Senate. Am I getting this stuff right? Because that's how I'm understanding you and breaking it, you way you broke it down to me. That it would just now it will, if it gets back on the agenda, then there may be an option to come with some reform. Am I hearing that right? Because that's a lot of red tape just to get a vote again, if I'm hearing you right.
So this is the frustration that the American people are feeling. Obamacare was enacted 15 years ago, and we're still messing around with should we have it or shouldn't we have it. A varying number of states implement all of it, right? So you have some states that implement all, some that implement some, and some that actively reject as much as they possibly can by law. So you have this ongoing war that the American people's health care is the subject of. More importantly, their access to health care is being raked over the coals, especially people who are not in jobs that have health care as a norm. So there are millions of Americans who rely on these subsidies, who rely on Obamacare. And if you remember, if you go back 15 years, Obamacare was a 50-state solution. It was not a partial solution for this state to reject part of it. It was a 50-state solution. So the system created by the law has never been fully implemented or used, which means all of these piecemeal Band-Aids, little bits and pieces here and there, and the Republicans threatening for the last 15 years to turn it all the way over and come up with something new. And they've had 15 years to put something together that has not been voted on at all in a comprehensive way. There's no comprehensive Republican alternative to Obamacare that's been voted on by the House and Senate. So what you have in this week is the Senate rejecting the deal that they said they vote. So they did vote, but they rejected any potential for extending the Obamacare subsidies. The House refused to vote on it at all, so there may be a petition. Even if the petition goes through, even if the vote somehow goes through, the Senate just rejected their deal. I think it was yesterday that the Senate rejected the deal that they made with the Democrats to vote on it in the first place. So you have this giant, tangled mess of political ideology that's jammed together that in order to untangle it, you would literally have to replace 535 members of Congress and ask all of the new people, can we please get the business of the people done? Because to your point earlier in this discussion, every other industrialized and developed nation has a form of universal health care, and many developing nations do as well. So for us as a nation to have nothing that remotely considers the least of us, it is a travesty in politics. It is a travesty for the American people, and it's a travesty for the healthcare system, because now they don't know how to act, because they don't know what money's coming to them or how they're going to fund the work they need to do on behalf of the American people's health. So it's a mess for everybody, and none of this is good politics for all involved.
Okay, so let me let's hear what President Trump has said about, because there's plenty of people who say ACA is bad. So here's what President Trump says, and I have another guy kind of breaking down some more, even more granular for anybody watching. And I see people kind of leaving, so maybe this is going too granular. But with 13 more days left before this happens, I wanted people to understand what's real versus what's being said. So here's President Trump's thoughts on the ACA, and another commentator, I don't know his name, breaking down some of the more granular points. Again, why not talk about this since this is kind of a big issue hovering over us as the people. And I'm thankful for the details, Emil. And we're going to go a little further with it. And I hope this is okay. All right.
It's okay by me.
At the end of this year, those extended Obamacare subsidies expire. What's your message to those 24 million Americans who will see their insurance premiums go up?
Don't make it sound so bad, because obviously you're a sycophant for Democrats. You're obviously a provider of bad news for Republicans. Let me just say something. The Republicans, I think I can speak for Tom and most other people. I think what most Republicans want to see is what I want to see. And I leave it to them, and hopefully they're going to put great legislation on this desk right here. We want to see all of the money that's been squandered and given to insurance companies, because Obamacare is horrible health insurance. It's far too expensive, and it always has been. But what it really is a way of making insurance companies rich. We want the money not to be paid at all to insurance companies. You know, insurance companies have gone up 1,700% over a short, meaning the stock, 1,700% over a short period of time. And they've taken in hundreds of billions and even trillions of dollars. And we want the money to go to the people. They'll go in the form of a insurance account, healthcare account, or any other form that we can create. We have a lot of different forms. We want to give the money to the people and let the people buy their own great healthcare. And they'll save a lot of money, and it'll be great. Now, the problem we have is that the Republicans are not at all controlled by the insurance companies. But you know who is? The Democrats.
Finally, Trump was asked the question that's on the minds of 24 million Americans, given the fact that Republicans have successfully managed to strip funding away from the ACA and voted against this week's effort to extend those subsidies for the next 3 years in the Senate. And of course, Trump's answer here was exactly what you'd expect. He starts, naturally, by calling the reporter asking the question a sycophant for Democrats and a provider of bad news for Republicans. Why? Because when you can't answer the question, you attack the person asking it. But let's be real here. 24 million Americans are about to see their health insurance premiums more than double because these enhanced ACA subsidies are expiring. So yeah, maybe it does sound bad because it is bad. That's not bias, that is reality. But okay, Trump then claims that he wants to take money away from insurance companies and give it directly to the people in the form of insurance accounts or healthcare accounts. Sounds great, right? Very populist, very people-powered, only small problem here. That's not actually what Republicans are proposing. What they're actually trying to do is replace the ACA subsidies that help people afford their monthly premiums with health savings accounts. And here's the kicker. HSAs, health savings accounts, cannot legally be used to pay insurance premiums. I'll repeat that. The accounts cannot pay for the thing that is about to skyrocket in price. So Trump's big solution here to people facing double, triple, quadruple premiums is to give them accounts that can't pay those premiums. No notes, Donald. No notes. So let's talk about what these Republican proposals actually look like. The Crapo-Cassidy plan, that's the Republicans' plan that's leading the pack right now, would give people under 50 just $1,000 per year in an HSA, and those between 50 and 64 would get $1,500. That sounds nice until you realize that the average bronze plan deductible in 2026 is nearly $7,500. 5 to 7 times larger than what they're proposing to put in these accounts. So again, tell me, how exactly is $1,000 supposed to help when you're facing a $7,500 deductible plus premiums that just doubled or tripled or quadrupled? It's offering people, as one Georgetown professor put it, a 1-foot rope to get out of a 10-foot hole. But wait, there's more. These HSAs aren't even available to everyone. They are only available to people who buy bronze or catastrophic plans. Those are the plans with the highest deductibles and the least coverage. So Republicans want to push people into the worst insurance plans available, give them a pittance to help with costs, and then pat themselves on the back for empowering the patients, because populism or something. Now, let's address...
So that's one guy's perspective. I want to challenge you, Emil. Hopefully we'll still get our brother Leo on here to get the other side of these things, right? And so here's how I'll challenge you when I listen to that cut. You know, I'm the context and numbers person, right? Love doing research. And so, you know, I think the guy breaks down, you know, the granular aspect of what you're actually getting. If you get $1,000, what can you give to it? And this is based on our current situations. How about this, though? If it was 100 of us on this live air right now, let's say we had a big Zoom and there was 100 of us, 24 million is effectively 6 people would be in that 24 people. And that 24 million. I want to put that number in context because, again, when people present information to you, they'll just give you the number out of context, right? Out of full context. And so I do want to kind of put that in perspective and challenge you from that standpoint. Like when he breaks it down for that 24 million, it's exactly what he's saying, right? But again, 24 million based on the population of America right now, if it was 100 of us on here, that we would be talking about 6 people. And I'm not saying we shouldn't be concerned with those 6 people, but I do need to understand what's the context of this in worrying about those 6 people. And maybe does the other, 94 people, does it not affect? And I don't know. That's why I'm challenging you to explain it.
Right. So here's the rub with healthcare across the board is that you use people who are healthier and the premiums they pay into the system to subsidize the people who draw more money than they put in because they have more risk. When Obamacare was first passed, there were over 38 million Americans who did not have healthcare insurance, which represented about 14.5% of the population. So out of that 100 viewers, 14 before Obamacare did not have healthcare insurance. That number was cut in half by Obamacare. So now today, you're talking about 24 million people that are covered under the enhanced ACA subsidies, which represents about half of that uninsured number that we had before Obamacare. This is very important because those people, when they don't have healthcare access to healthcare coverage, like through insurance or Obamacare, they drive the highest costs in the system. The highest costs in the system are people at the end of life and people who don't have healthcare coverage, right? Those are the two people who drive the most money coming into or coming out of that cost the most for the healthcare system. So these subsidies keep an entire population healthier, which drives all costs down, which over time, again, remember, Obamacare is a 50-state solution that's never been fully implemented. If you had all 50 states working together under the same system, you would see those costs begin to come down, especially over the last decade that it's been fully implemented, because people would be healthier, they'd have regular access to healthcare. And there's tons of studies from the right and the left where if you give people access to healthcare coverage, they tend to be healthier over time and their overall lifetime cost goes down. Now, Brian Tyler Cohen, who's somebody I watch every now and again because he is very thorough, even though he's very left-leaning. One of the things he said is that the bronze coverage, people don't understand about the bronze coverage. I won't go into it in detail except for two things. One, there is a $7,500 deductible for that, meaning that before insurance pays a penny, you're paying $7,500 out of pocket. Second, there is a 60-40 split. The insurance company pays 60% of the cost. Your copay for that insurance is 40% of the healthcare cost, in addition to the $7,500 deductible. So you're talking
again,
about
this is
thousands of dollars coming out of the person's pocket who's covered under bronze. That's an awful plan.
We're still talking about one of those six. Yeah, but we are talking about one of those six people, right?
Well, we're talking about one of those six.
Here's what I understand.
That's right.
Yeah. So out of 100, for anybody that just tuned in, I put the 24 million in the context of 100 people in the country, right? And so that's for those six people. But your overall thing was, hey, with these overall plans, we can lower the cost for everyone. So this is why you think it's effective. Can you speak to what the other side would say in reference to how much money we're putting in the insurance? Like President Trump saying, hey, we're putting all this money in these insurance companies, which to a degree, if there's anything that Americans do agree on, it's the idea that we think insurance companies get too much money. Like, I'm not right or wrong. That's just something that Americans kind of just agree on, right? And so,
oh man, are you kidding? You're 100% right, and I agree with the president. If you go back in time and look over the last 10 years or so, American insurance companies have profited, not made, profited over $370 billion. Under the Obamacare system, when they're supposed to spend between 80 and 85% of their revenue on delivering healthcare back to the system. But what it didn't do is it didn't cap them from raising the cost of the care. So yes, they are putting their money back into healthcare, but they're just raising their costs too, which ends up making them a ton of money. In fact, when they don't spend enough, they're supposed to rebate the policyholders. And so far, over the last 10 years, versus that $371 billion in profit, they've only returned $12.5 billion to policyholders because they weren't spending enough money. So yes, the president is 100% accurate that insurance companies, the vehicle through which all healthcare is delivered in America, by the way, right? Healthcare companies are responsible for paying out paying out for healthcare. That's how we do it in this country. We set that system up under President Nixon, who started HMOs. There was a different system before President Nixon. So when you go back and look at how healthcare has changed over the last 60 years, you can't just say Obamacare made it worse. It was a bad system under Nixon. And that system has propagated why insurance companies are so powerful, why they're so important, why they're in the middle of the healthcare system, because you're supposed to have a provider, your doctor, and your patient. But now you have an insurance company in the middle. Those insurance companies are woven into the healthcare system. So to cut them out would be to change the entire system, which would be universal care. The president is not advocating universal care. So if you have a health savings account, say your $1,000 or $1,500 that Brian Tyler Cohen was talking about, you have to ask the question, who does that money go to? Where does that $1,000 go? Back to the insurance companies. That's the vehicle through which healthcare coverage is delivered to an individual. It's not going to go directly to a doctor or a nurse or an anesthesiologist. It's going to go to the healthcare insurance companies, who are then going to pay those providers. So even with his plan, because the only way you can get out of that is to put a universal healthcare system in place, or something that caps, like Switzerland, which uses in private insurance companies for its healthcare coverage, but they still have universal care. Those insurance companies in Switzerland get 3% profit. That's their margin, and they are capped on how much they can inflate their cost. So a place like Switzerland does have a private healthcare insurance system that provides universal coverage, but they also have strict government controls on profit margin. So we don't have both of those in place.
And strict government control, I know, is kind of a no-no for people on the right. And again, I'm not saying which one is right or wrong, but I know that's probably the issue, because I'm sitting here just using common sense, in my opinion, as an independent. The common sense for me would just simply be, hey, let's go copy people that are doing this well. But if it seems too much outside of what fits inside of American politics, if you will, people have an issue. Marquise Harden says you are spot on. We got another comment from our brother Kenny77, always piping in, helping, watching the show. Says they don't care, they don't want universal care, and they don't want subsidized coverage. He said, in his opinion, says they're ignorant and dangerous. People are going to die and go bankrupt over this. I see you shaking your head. I'm about to get off of healthcare, but I am curious about the superlative language. Again, that feels like, to me, it just sounds like propaganda. I'm not saying he's wrong. I'm just telling you how I receive regardless of what side says it, I get on alert when I hear extreme language. I'll let you respond to that, and then we'll go to another subject after.
It is extreme language, but his hyperbole has a point, and that's the thing that I want people to recognize, that yes, there's a ton of hyperbole on both sides, but the bottom line is, before Obamacare, people were going bankrupt due to medical costs at a rate that was almost unreal, right? About 60 to 65% of all bankruptcies before Obamacare were attributable to just medical costs.
Right. I do remember that, now that you say that.
Right. Now you have that number cut in half. So about a third of all bankruptcies are due to medical care costs after ACA, right? That number got cut in half because of Obamacare. So when we talk about money going out of people's hands to the medical system, we're not just talking about subsidies. We're talking about people's livelihoods, people's life savings, people that have lost their jobs and have a catastrophic illness at the same time, having nothing to cover them, going bankrupt, and then being in debt for the rest of their lives, or trying to figure out how to get out of that. Those are things that are not hyperbole. So yes, on both sides, you will hear the hyperbole, but the bottom line is people's lives are truly impacted by this. Before Obamacare, pre-existing conditions prevented people from getting healthcare coverage. After Obamacare, pre-existing conditions could not, which meant people could get the care they needed to extend their lives and their productivity. So no, yes, it is hyperbole, but it's also an illustration of the fact that we're just stuck in a system that one side refuses to implement fully or change in any considerably beneficial way.
Got another comment. Kenny 77 is coming at me, says, bro, talking about me, of course. We are the only post-industrial nation without universal health care. Let that sink in. I did mention that earlier in the show, Kenny, just so you know. UK, France, Canada, Australia, Japan, etc., all have universal health care. Why? And he says, because we worship capitalism. Fair enough comment. I will say something that I've always been thankful for. And again, I'm not saying I understand this well and I know who's right per se, but I know I've never forgotten that when my uncle passed, kind of, just kind of wayward, kind of lived, he's kind of in the streets kind of guy, right? Or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so he went through some medical issues, and I know I was happy that at the time he was able to be covered, and for the stuff that he was going through, had we had to cover it as a family, we wouldn't have been able to afford it or whatever. And so he didn't last a lot of years after going through this stuff, but I always was thankful to be, in a sense, in a country where this worked out. So I'm not saying that's on the left or the right. I'm just saying that's something that I absolutely appreciative that, in a sense, since he hadn't covered himself, you know what I mean? And obviously we were there for him in every way that we could, but we could have never paid the cost of some of the things, procedures he went through before he left us. So that was something that I was always grateful for. How does that personal thought factor into everything we're saying? If you give me one quick line on that, and then we're going to go to another.
Yeah. I'll say this. People like you every day have to make a decision between food or life, between rent or life, between death or life, because of dollars. This is the only nation in the world, and people from outside of our nation often look at us like we have lost our minds because they say healthcare costs money, and we accept that as a norm. Outside of this nation, people, especially people from, like Kenny said, post-industrialized nations, they scratch their heads and wonder, what value system are we using that would allow us to do that to our own people?
Yeah, I would love to have Brother Leo, who said he wasn't going to be able to make it with us. So I would love to hear his perspective.
I would love to do as well.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, here's something that just recently happened. Pretty disgusting just in general, but I think it continues to speak to where we're at as a republic. So let me play this cut and get your thoughts, brother.
To those criticizing President Trump for posting an angry rant that Reiner was bad for the country just hours after his murder is growing. Even the most loyal Trump supporters are calling for him to delete his post.
With President Trump doubling down on his stunning criticism of slain director Rob Reiner.
No, I was not a fan of Rob Reiner at all in any way, shape, or form. I thought he was very bad for our country.
Even big names who are solidly in Trump's corner are slamming his reaction to the murder of the Hollywood icon and his wife.
That just crosses every line of just basic human decency.
Actor and outspoken conservative James Woods was friends with the famously liberal Reiner for decades.
When people say horrible things about Rob right now, I find it quite frankly infuriating and distasteful. Did I agree with his politics? I did not. Did I love him as a friend? I most certainly did.
On The Five, Fox News personality Greg Gutfeld said he would have handled it differently.
If it were me, I'd go but I'm sorry he's dead. But he can't let that go. We don't have to like it. I just look at the deeds, but I get why you're upset.
It's wrong. I don't disagree with you, but it's wrong, and we should be able to call out right and wrong.
Fellow Fox host Laura Ingraham did not mention President Trump, but she praised Reiner. She played a clip of Reiner from her show in 2018.
Rob Reiner is someone who actually should be lauded because he's someone who doesn't agree with probably a lot of what I think. That's fine. But he actually comes in for a conversation.
Everybody but the President of the United States seems to have that humanity and seems to be aching for the Reiners.
That cut comes from Inside Edition, as we see. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. I don't want to make our show about who President Trump is when it comes to how obvious this is who he is, right? Like, I don't want to make that our discussion. I would, in this part, it's very hard not to have the other side here. And to be fair to Leo, he's always called this aspect of Trump out himself, even though he's on the other side. So to be fair, that if he was here, I would assume he would, in a sense, be in agreement with us. But I still see some people surprised. But the other thing is, this is the thing that has caused some of them to lose. Some Trump supporters, in a sense, he's losing his base over this reaction. Your thoughts on that, just in general, Emil?
So, like you said, I won't talk about the quality of the person who we both agree is not worthy of that part of our discussion. But I will ask for two things. One, let's go back to Charlie Kirk and how that was handled, and how that dude was immediately lionized, and how if you spoke ill of him, they were damn near ready to censor you. Literally, the government was literally going to censor you if you spoke ill of Charlie Kirk after his death. Now the president, upon the death of someone who is nothing like Charlie Kirk, except that he disagreed with him politically, is bagging on him at the end of his life. That tells you everything you need to know about our political system right now. That tells you everything you need to know. Look at how Charlie Kirk was handled, and look at how Rob Reiner was handled. And the fortunate thing is that there are people who have the decency to say, that's probably not the best way to handle this, boss. That's not the way we do things here. And perhaps people are beginning to see that dancing on someone's grave before the dude's even buried, before the dude's body's even cold, is probably not reflective of the values you say you hold. And this is where you got to ask those questions. Are you so locked into a political mindset that you can't see the humanity of someone's child, mentally disturbed or not, killing his parents, and just say nothing? You don't have to say a word. That's an option you can take, to say literally nothing. What did our mamas tell us, Montoya, back in the day? If you ain't got nothing good to say about somebody,
don't say nothing at all.
Don't say nothing at all. And he had that option. He chose not to exercise that option. And now you see how one group of people lionizes somebody for their inflammatory words, and how another I don't even think Rob Reiner is controversial, in my opinion. I mean, like, we all watched The Princess Bride, and none of us was like, oh, we're up in arms over how bad that movie was politically or whatever. We know Rob Reiner very well. He made some of the movies that are iconic for our generation. But what I'm trying to say is that you don't need to see another illustration of the way the politics is working in this nation when the president feels free to dance on someone's grave after they've been murdered by their own child.
And so, and this is kind of where I know you're going. I just want to highlight this and extend it where you're going. And again, as the Politically Conscious show, it is becoming astutely aware of who we've become. It's like becoming astutely aware of who we've become. I'm talking about as the Republic. Like it or not, we selected that president.
Yep.
Like it has to be said this way to understand the bigger point. Because again, myself or Emil, nor would Leo be surprised by how petty President Trump has always been as a person prior to becoming president, right? Like, but talking about his character and who we selected as a president, as a country, it's the reality is there's enough of sycophants on both sides. This is a both sides rant, and it makes sense if you listen to me closely. There are enough sycophants on both sides who will just simply say, look at what they did. And you didn't do this, but I mean, you just giving the comparison. So like we go look at with Kirk and how he, as you said, was lionized, and people literally people actually lost their jobs from what I understand.
Yes.
Like, there's a number floating around the internet, and I didn't research it, so I didn't pull it to the show, but there's a number of floating around the internet, so how many people particularly lost their jobs or whatever. Now, it wasn't a huge number, but just the fact that, so many hundred people supposedly lost their job, like that's a number that's floating around. I didn't research it, but I'm just using it for context of this conversation. That they went that far, and they're like, well, dang, well now look at what the president does. And my bigger point is, quite often in politics, when you are locked in on your side and unaware of the propaganda, you literally just go back and forth and literally go, well, look at when you do it. And both sides, in a sense, get caught up in being on their side so much that you're unaware of when you're doing the same thing. And at that point, that is advantage elite. That is advantage politicians. And so the idea of politically conscious raising awareness is if you are emotionally caught up, in my opinion, of anything that this president does, it's easier to pull the wool over your eyes at various times. I'm not talking about this particular issue. This issue is what it is. It is completely distasteful, so distasteful to his own base that many are calling it out for what it is and moving away. That is what it is. And so if you're on the left right now and you're like, yeah, good for them, or see, why didn't they always see it? Because again, I would have asked, for example, Shelley, whatever. And I would have loved to hear his answer, not hear his answer from a logical standpoint. And what I mean is hear his answer on how he was able to, in a sense, probably, and again, I respect Shelley's mindset. He would say, hey, it comes with this, but this is what I wanted. And this is how politics works. Like it may have been I'm pretty sure he would have a viable reason why, hey, this is what I was looking for. Mm-hmm. I accepted some of this, and I'm pretty sure that would be some of his response. And as I always say, is people care about politics from the standpoint of what matters to them. Most of us are not as informed as those who run the country don't want us to be, right? So most of us are not informed. I don't claim to be this highly informed voter. And I say this to say that something that I said at the very beginning of this show: stop ridiculing people and saying they're not voting in their own interests. And the reason I used to say that is because you still have to ultimately understand that if you are a one-issue voter or a two-issue voter, if that's what matters to me, and I believe this is what I'm about to get, and when I say believe what I'm about to get, that becomes a rational decision.
Yes.
Although the reason I may believe it may be due to propaganda, and let's be honest, the propaganda is so available via social media, you can't fault someone for not being able to see through everything. Like, I'm just trying to still make sure we remember that we selected this president. And when I say we, it's a understanding of how some of these things happening. There are people right now that are facing the rude awakening of what's happening right now. And plenty of people sitting back and saying, hey, well, you should have seen it coming. I know it ain't that simple. So that's my rant. We got a couple of minutes. I'll give you the last 2 minutes to rant on what we did. But I definitely felt like we thoroughly broke down despite what you're hearing about a discharge, Emil broke down when it comes to this healthcare thing. We are not out of the water, even if Republicans break and do what you suggested. There's more to be done. And that was the bigger point of making sure we still did a show this week, and that people are not falling for the propaganda of it's happening or it's not happening. There's a lot more to go. So I think we did do that well. All right, brother, I'll give you the last 2 minutes.
Bruh, so the thing is, when you talk about who we selected, people are, well, I didn't vote for him, but we support a system. We are operating within a democratic republic, a system that we all support. So we have to work with the system as it is, flawed though it may be in many ways, that we have an illustration. So if you're a one-issue voter, you say, okay, I'm willing to tolerate all this other behavior if I get the one thing I want. Okay, great. But how does that bode for your future when you want something that your guy's not in charge of delivering? How are you going to find compromise in that system under those rules? Because this is how our system works, that one side may win and another side may win, and then we have to figure out how to get somewhere into our future. The contrast of all of this is, to me, very, very clear. We're going to have to agree as a nation that certain things are off limits. And it's not just political speech is this kind of political speech. Are we going to say that certain types of behaviors from our commander in chief, who is perhaps setting us up for a war in Venezuela right now that we didn't even have a chance to discuss? Are we willing to accept that a president can dance on the grave of someone? That same president can say, I am outlawing these things, or I'm pursuing all sorts of people that I didn't say I would pursue for deportation, because that's all part of the package that you voted for and that our system tolerates. And I would hazard a guess that many of us have buyer's remorse. Many of us have participants remorse, i.e., I should have done more. And something that I read earlier this week struck me really hard, that all politics is local. So the local politicians who are falling in line behind the president, who will emulate this president, are also affected by our decisions. So perhaps it's time for all of us to wake up and start participating in the system so that we don't have an illustration like this that says, this is not the character I want my nation to portray to the rest of the world. But today, because we agree that this is our system and this is how we have exercised our voice within that system, this is what we all get. And what I want for us to remember as voters and people and citizens, we have a choice. This system is not on rails. It is not on autopilot. It can be pushed and pulled and maneuvered. And the reason why we're here is because pushers and pullers and maneuverers have put us here. But we don't have to let them control us. It's up to us to make a difference. And we have time to recover the system, but we got to start now.
Yep. We set the standards. If we felt like there was a time where the commander in chief wouldn't have done some of these things, that time existed because of how we were as a nation.
That's right.
And that's what I want people to remember versus it lets us off the hook if we reduce it down to the character of that one man. And so that's the challenge that I think we both have set for our watchers today. So thank you, Emil. Again, we had to shorten the show this week. We'll be back next week. We'll get to some of the bigger things, the Venezuela stuff. I'll show you some of the shaker and movers who are going through some real experiences, proving what we as a voters can do. It's a brother by the name of Jay Williams is being attacked and getting sued. And I would love to bring it to the table, but we'll bring it to the table next week, Emil.
For sure. I look forward to it.
All right, brother. See y'all next week.
Peace.
If you're tired of the propaganda, listen to us.
Listen to us.